Commissioners of the Greater Boca Raton Beach and Park District is now called to order. It is Monday, July 6, 2020. The time is 5:15 p.m. Joanne, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Ernst?
Here.
Commissioner Engel?
Here.
Commissioner Rollins?
Here.
Commissioner Vogelsett?
Here.
Commissioner Linder?
Here. Thank you, Joanne. Commissioners, are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, good. It is now time for public requests. Brianne said that there is one to read into the record, and then we have some call-ins. So, Brianne, would you like to start with the one that was written?
Sure. I also have just a comment from Mr. Duquette, who sent an email prior to the meeting, and he just wanted me to reiterate the importance of working with residents to decide on Boca Chica amenities. And then we have from Jim Miller, who's president of Friends of Gumbo Limbo. Madam Chair and Commissioners, these are difficult times and it is a challenge to put together a good financial plan and budget. Friends continues to work with the city and the district staff to come up with plans to address the most important needs of Gumbo Limbo, and you have a draft budget for 2021, which we believe does that. There are concerns about the cost of two big projects, the tower and the seawater supply. It is important that, while the full master plan is not realistic now, we need to deal with immediate critical issues at the center that are in the project line called GL Master Plan. We urge the Commissioners to move ahead with the proposal, and Friends will continue to work with the city and the district as more information is developed. Please know that the Friends of Gumbo Limbo is functioning. We are working with the center to continue and expand service to our community and protect our natural resources. Our veterinarian team is still treating stranded and injured turtles. Release and track programs continue. Online educational and promotional work is being done, and Friends continues to work on new practices and plans to be a better partner and keep the Gumbo Limbo Nature Center among Friends' elite environmental educational facilities. For now, we encourage you to support the financial plan for Gumbo Limbo. Thank you. Sincerely, Jim Miller, President of Friends of Gumbo Limbo, 480 East Boca Raton Road, Boca Raton, Florida. And then I have two people that wanted to speak. One is Mr., I hope I pronounce this right, Silverti, and then Mr. Travieso. If you all are on the line, if you want to raise your hand by pressing *9, we can see you and get you on. Oh, I have somebody here, so. The phone number ending with 6965, you are unmuted.
Yeah, good afternoon, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I was hoping to speak after Mr. Celebrity, but here I go. Commissioner, I'm sorry?
Would you give your name and address, please?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Commissioners, I am Raul Travieso, and I reside at 1037 West Royal Palm Road. I am the USA Pickleball Association Boca Raton and Florida Southeast District Ambassador. My volunteer duties include assisting other local ambassadors between Martin and Monroe counties in promoting and expanding the sport of pickleball. As such, during the last 4 years, I and other resident players have spoken before this commission on several occasions regarding the increasing demand for dedicated pickleball courts. In fact, last month, Leanne read my comments regarding the need for more courts. On behalf of our over 300 followers, I wish to take this opportunity to provide the support for Mr. Celebrity's proposal to repurpose the abandoned tennis courts at Boca Chica and convert them into a pickleball complex. The demand for pickleball courts is exploding, and we must get in front of this popularity. Local residents continue to express their gratitude for the first and only outdoor courts at the city's El Rio Park. The 4 courts at El Rio have been extremely busy with many players waiting to play. I am sure that you're aware that many regional private communities advertise pickleball as their #1 amenity. As a matter of fact, almost all of the gated communities throughout the greater Boca Raton taxi district have pickleball complex for their residents. And yet the rest of the citizens only have 4 daytime unlit courts to share. Pickleball is no longer a retirement sport, as younger players are now emerging. 2 years ago, I chaired a train-the-trainer program with other volunteers to teach over 80 Palm Beach County physical education teachers how to play the game. As a result, pickleball is being taught at elementary, middle, and high schools throughout the county. To address the lack of courts, Palm Beach County Recreation has converted 2 underutilized tennis courts to 6 pickleball courts at Oklahoma Park, Lake Lido Park, and John Prince Park. The approximate cost of repurposing these courts at each park is about $50,000. In addition, 6 brand new courts are budgeted for this fiscal year at the South County Regional Park, just west of us. I believe that the Beach and Parks District and the city should become proactive and create dedicated lighted pickleball courts. The 4 dedicated courts at El Rio are just not enough. Throughout the city, we have an abundance of lighted tennis courts. Your constituents are asking for pickleball courts. Here are our recommendations for consideration. Number 1, as promoted by Mr. Celebrity, refurbish and convert the abandoned tennis courts at Boca Chica to pickleball. Number 2, we propose that the district, with the city support, consider transforming 2 tennis courts at Patch Creek or Swimming Rapids Club, which would still maintain a surplus of over 16 tennis courts. Nationally, there are a multitude of successful tennis/pickleball centers. And number 3, move forward with the delayed phase 2 of the Spanish River Athletic Park. This is the ideal venue to build a lighted pickleball complex. Finally,
Ronald,
Deep-Throated Grove, is my time up?
it is, thank you very much.
Okay, you're very welcome.
Madam Chair, I just have one question, if I might have, Ronald. What about the pickleball play at the gymnasium at Sugarson Park? Are you not using that for pickleball?
No, we have, that's correct. We have, Ms. Rollins, we have 6 temporary courts there during the year, Monday through Friday, we play in the morning. However, since the pandemic, that facility has been closed, and there's no anticipated open date for that facility.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there someone else, Brian?
Mr. Silberti, I see you here on the phone. I'm gonna unmute you if you,
You're on mute.
Okay, great. Hi, this is Anthony Silberti, and I'm the president currently of Congo 4, which is in Boca Chica, which is the closest condominium to tennis courts in all of Boca Chica. Basically, I want to go over a little bit of page 4 of the request for proposals, or page 13 of the package I received. Number 2, under the scope of work, and it says the design purpose should address a minimum of the following. Letter I, innovative recreational concepts, northwest corner utilizing the courts and parking lot currently in place. Example, pickleball, tennis, art-inspired course, obstacle course, I think it says. I'm like a self-appointed, myself and another friend of mine, kind of committee person that I just wanted to look into it a little bit. The other person is a structural engineer, so we could take a quick look at it on the CPA. And I see on the 3 corners you have a budget of, $10,000 per corner, $20,000 per corner, $30,000 per corner. And if there's a plan to utilize the courts, which I'd be naive to think that there wouldn't be, and I realize it's a whole greater Boca Raton, a natural transference at this point in time in today's society would be pickleball or tennis courts. However, designated $30,000 per corner landscaping and to do a recreational facility is light. Now, I don't think that we have to spend all that much money. I did look at it with a structural engineer, and converting the tennis courts to pickleball courts, the infrastructure is already there. There is 200 amps coming in. There's also the base, the pavement itself for the tennis courts. And pickleball courts don't need really high fences like tennis courts. Yes, maybe where the traffic would be, then we would go as high as maybe tennis court. But basically, the linear foot for fencing wouldn't be as much as the typical tennis court. And as president of Condo 4, I believe that basically, if there is a conversion, and like I said, be naive to think there wouldn't be a conversion, pickleball would be the most useful and enjoyed amenity for the greater Boca Raton area. It is very popular, like Raul said, and I believe that, it would get the least resistance. There are a number of other options that, I realize Boca Chica and Condo 4 have no control over, but other options, I know for a fact, some of them, I hear a lot of it saying, why can't I do something about it? And I was like, well, I can. I'm trying to do something, trying to, take the best possibility that we're going to have. Now, basically, I'm estimating $50,000 to $75,000 for conversion of tennis courts, but I'm looking at this as a separate project, not one of the four corners that include all the landscaping. This is a separate recreational facility, so I'm a CPA. I can tell you that it can be done much cheaper than starting from scratch. Like I said, the infrastructure is there, and the conversion would be very easy. Now, right now, there's 6 tennis courts, which court surface would be, on a regulation tennis court, 16,848 square feet. Pickleball court is much less. The standard tennis court is 78 by 36 feet, which is 2,808 square feet. The standard pickleball court is 20 by 44 feet, which is 880 square feet. So basically, just the court surface alone, you'd be able to put 19 pickleball courts in that space. Now, I'm not suggesting we put 19 pickleball courts, but as far as $30,000 to $50,000 getting a few in there, now, I see that very doable, very possible, very easy conversion. And it wouldn't need its own budget, though. I mean, it is a separate, you're talking about like a facility inside a park. So, I mean, I can further explore it if I think that there's going to be room in the budget. If the budget was only like $30,000 max per corner, for the 3 corners, no, I don't think it could be done with CPA. I don't see it between the landscaping and all the requirements that are set up within the proposal.
Mr. Silver,
Okay, my time's up, but I thank you for listening.
can you give us an address? You didn't give your full
I'm
address.
sorry. My name's Anthony Silveri, and I live in Condo 8 in Boca Chica, but I'm the president of Condo 4 in Boca Chica.
I
That's
need,
6200 Northwest 2nd Avenue, Unit 315.
we're much appreciative. Thank you very much.
We have, Mr. Galeas wants to speak.
Okay. Hi, Greg.
Hi guys, how is everybody?
We're good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I get on a little bit late, so my apologies if I'm covering some ground that you guys have already covered. But I have been on,
Address,
what?
your name and address, please.
1780 Southwest 22nd Ave. You guys should have it memorized by now.
I know, but we have to do it for the record.
Okay, I understand. I'm gonna be very brief. And again, my apologies if you've already covered some of this ground. But I'm not real sure why we're talking about pickleball courts, golf course beautification, and walking trails. Okay? We've spent $25 million in taxpayers' money for a golf course. $3 million a year in debt service. We need to get razor focused. This is not the Boca Chica recreational resort over there. We need to put some money into this thing. We need to get the city off the dime. I'm hoping you guys have an update from the city. In the absence of that, I think we need to proceed with legal pressure on the city for unreasonably withholding approval of the design. I understand everyone's dealing with the virus and all of that, but at the end of the day, they've had this thing for way too long and they need to move forward. But I would request that you guys stay razor focused. I don't want to hear about pickleball courts. I don't want to hear about planting flowers at the entrance of Boca Chica or even walking trails on the golf course. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Greg. Is there anyone else, Priya?
I may have one more person. They're just having trouble getting into the meeting. Could we give 1 second?
Sure.
I have Mr. Chaffee. Are you going to speak because you were unmuted there?
Can you hear me?
Your name and address here, Carol?
It's gone again.
Okay, now you're muted. Go ahead.
Hello,
Name and address here.
my name is Harold Chappie. I live at 6200 Northwest 2nd Avenue, apartment 420. Says your video is stopped.
We can hear you, Mr. Chaffee.
Okay, I can't hear anything on my television, that's why. I just wanted to agree with what Greg had said. You know, the object is to complete the golf course. That's what your goal is. You know, we keep on wanting to spend, think about things we can do. We're gonna beautify the three corners. We're gonna build a pickleball court, whatever. You know, I heard so many excuses about the pandemic, that the city is overwhelmed. They really, you know, the only thing they can focus in on is that, but yet they can make an $8.5 million, they can spend to make an agreement to basically get a quote or whatever it is and proceed on the wildflower for $8 million. If they can do that, we're waiting 5 years for a decision, only a yes or a no on this golf course.
Did we lose you again?
I don't know, can you hear me? I can't see anything. It says speaking done on my television. And anyway, like I said, I'd like to see if we can just proceed. The other thing that was riding around yesterday, and I passed, I'm going down Military, turning down Spanish River. As I passed that school that's there, I'm not sure it's a high school or a grammar school, I saw like 10 or 12 tennis courts actually empty. All these schools are shut down. No one's in the schools. If you talk about opening up something for pickleball, I don't know how difficult it is or what's involved in basically redoing a tennis court or just moving a net. You know, there's so many, like high school and grammar schools all shut down, and all those tennis courts are just vacant. If they really want to play, if they really want to push the issue, you know, they'd have to get a hold of the county and find out. But it would be an idea, rather than spend $60,000 for pickleball courts over here at Boca Chica, they're going to be taken up in a year, because that's where the staging area is for all the equipment to do the golf course. It's just such a waste of money. We should just focus in on one thing and let's get an answer. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night and be safe.
Two. Anyone else?
I do. I'm actually going to call this person in just to speak through my phone because they're having a hard time dialing in, so. You are on the meeting now.
Okay.
Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Bruce Miller, Standard, 140 Southeast Fifth Avenue, Boca Raton, 33432. So, I think the pandemic should be a wake-up call. Because A, there's gonna be a lot less tax revenue coming in eventually, a year down the road, 2 years down the road. I think it's possibly time to really look at what you're going to do with Ocean Breeze. Let's look at the reality of it. The city just extended another extension to GO Homes. Okay, GO Homes has $2 million invested in this project. The Beach and Park District has $1 million. Okay, you know what? There is deeds that say that you have to put golf on there. But did golf even come in the top 5 of the needs assessment? I think it's really time to look and go, okay, what kind of golf can we put on Ocean Breeze, and what can we do for the rest of the community? Because building a $30 million golf course is not going to happen in the next 10 years. The reality is, golf didn't even get back to its 2010 level, which I think was the highest. Just one more thing. There are more golf courses closing than there are opening. So I think that's something to look at. And I don't foresee Boca Beauty actually being sold. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Verstanden. Anyone else? Brianne?
I am looking. If there's anybody else that wants to speak, if you press *9, we can see that your hand is raised to speak. I do not see anybody else.
Okay, hearing none. Public requests are now closed. It's time for the approval of the minutes of the regular virtual meeting that was held on June 15th, 2020. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Joanne, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Ernst,
Yes.
Commissioner Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang,
Yes.
Commissioner White.
You're on mute, Erin.
Yes.
Mute.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. We now come to the portion of the meeting for regular business. The first item is the pedestrian gate at the Swim and Racket Club. Melissa, would you like to give us an update on?
Yes, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay? Okay. Commissioners, in your packet on page 8 and 9, I called 2 different fencing companies to get some competitive quotes for a fence and with a punch pad key lock. A punch pad lock, so no key is needed to go in between the back neighborhood and the Swim and Racket Center. So you have the quotes there in front of you, one for $2,950 and one for $2,980. And this will be a black aluminum fence made to somewhat pretty closely match what's already around the Swim and Racket Center.
I have a question. I mean, did you have a feeling about one company or the other?
No, I mean, I think both of these companies would do really well. One of them did quote the $2,950 is a mechanical punch lock. I'm very familiar with those. They're used a lot in athletic facilities, both indoor and out. They require no power, they require no battery, which I think is nice because you don't have to worry about a battery dying. You have a little tool, you can go and open the back up and change the lock combination easily if you need to do so. And then the one from Zebco is a battery operated one, so you would have to worry about whether the battery died or not.
The XL fencing did not require any electricity or any battery, correct?
Correct.
Madam Chairman, just to Melissa, did you check out any references to either of these 2 vendors as far as patchwork and satisfaction for the previous users of their service?
Bob, I have not checked out on on Zebco as of yet. I'm happy to make calls if that's who you go to. I know that all their, I only called companies that had good Yelp ratings as a start. I do know that we have done work with XL Fencing. They've been very responsive and they've done a great job.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Melissa. Experience with these kind of fences is through my nonprofit experience when we had to build a fence around the playground because changes were required at the Y. And it also was at our church. The 7-foot high fence with the 6 panels and stuff like that. Because of the height, it means the length of the pipes are pretty long and narrow. And what we found when we had to put up a height of a fence like that is that it's the gauge of aluminum that they use for, because little kids quickly bent the fence right open. And so I know we want to put in the right type of fence and make sure that it doesn't get destroyed right away, but I think you probably do want to take a closer look at the durability and the gauge of aluminum that they use for each of the fence posts. Because the taller, longer it is, without any kind of proper bracing in the middle or anything that creates a step to get over it, you do have some, it could be wasted money. So I would just ask if you do know the gauge of the aluminum, and if you don't, which I don't expect it right now, but I would suggest seeing and reviewing it before putting it in, because there is a risk that it's just wasted effort to put anything in there.
That's great, Craig. I will look into that. I don't know the gauge right off the top of my head. When I talked to both these companies, I took them up and we took a look at the aluminum fencing that was in the back of the building, and I asked them to quote a similar, but duly noted, and you are correct, I will make sure that we get that gauge. It's a good point.
Or make it strengthened and reinforced, it has to be reinforced, so it can't be.
Correct, okay.
Slide here.
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, are there any other questions? I would suggest that we defer this until she can get the correct information and also get the references from Zecco also. I'd like to hear those. Are there any other questions for Melissa? Okay, Melissa, you've got your work cut out for you on that, please. Our second, this is the golf course beautification RFP, Brianne.
Commissioners, I put together the RFP. You all saw a copy of it at our last meeting, and I made some revisions to the scope of work. And we went through this, Jacob read through it as far as the legal side of it. This is a design build RFP, and I think basically our focus tonight is on the scope of work, which was referenced in the public comments earlier tonight, if there was any feedback on here to hear it.
Commissioners, do you have any comments or questions, Mr. Rollins?
My question, Madam Chair.
Aaron, you good? She is. Greg?
I'm here. Sorry, I had to unmute. I read through it. I just want to make sure that we're talking about any kind of bushes and shrubbery that can provide a little bit of security as well in terms of, if it can be done. Hiding pathways to the condos or whatever, because there was some emails in regards to this that they were concerned about security. In terms of opening this up. So if there's any deterrent, which state is here, that would prevent vehicle and all varieties from accessing the golf course.
Yes.
So, you know what I mean? Just trying to add some more deterrent in terms of getting closer to the condos and things like that.
So are you looking for more,
Area, you know what I mean?
you're looking for me to expand on B? To talk a little bit more about that, or?
Yeah, I guess, try to prevent vehicles and people, I guess, or, unwanted, or, people
Trespassing?
Yeah, trespassing, in the condo area or the golf course area.
Mr. Ernst, do you have any comments?
The only comment I had is I'm sensitive to the feedback that people have voiced so far, earlier in the public comments, is the laser focus on golf or not. But I guess for, clarification, communication to everyone who may be listening, it is my understanding that this cost that we approved gives us budget options, 3 different options. It's all material that could be reused potentially in the golf course, and it's also designed to reduce the need to have fencing up, which is a rental expense. So the longer this kind of continues on, this will kind of pay for itself to some degree. It is still our intention to go forward with the master plan of a project of the golf course, and thus that's why the budget is so small. It's not a massive investment, but it's intended to offset all the current ongoing costs, and at least make it look a little bit better than the current is.
Madam Chairman, this is Bob real quick. As far as interest in the area is concerned, I mean, there may be some areas where we have shrubbery of some nature that's will beautify the area, but you could end up concealing, these bollards that may prevent unauthorized access by vehicles to the course. If you follow what I'm talking about, I mean, they could be, the shrubbery can be in such a way that it would deter somebody, but if you had some barrier behind that that's obscured, that might be one way to upgrade the security from the access to the golf course, preventing ATVs and the like from going on the course. Just a passing comment.
Thank you, Mr. Cole.
Are temporary. So we're looking at maybe a couple of years at the outside. And I too am sensitive to the needs and wants of the community. But I'm wondering whether something like pickleball will be practical. Unless it's something that at some point we can keep as a permanent feature. So my question is, can we keep a pickleball court, if constructed, as a permanent feature of the golf course?
It wasn't part of the design that was over there originally. We could certainly talk to Wayne about implementing that, but it was not part of the 18-hole design of the west side, the one that we're waiting on approval from the city for.
And if we kept it as a permanent feature, how would it affect the golf course? Would it impede the playability? Would it affect accessibility to the course?
There were tennis courts over there while it was a golf course in the past, so I guess from a historical perspective, it happened before, but I'd have to talk to Wayne to talk about his design and how it would impact the holes and the way they've run the course over that on that side.
Yeah, may I speak, Madam Chair?
Mr. Rollins has the floor.
I was just going to suggest that I think Harold Chappie had a comment about the tennis courts over there at Don Estridge, and he's right. I've never seen those courts used here adjacent to the military, just north of the baseball diamonds. And I'm just wondering, that might, now, because it's a public school, you're not going to be able to access those courts while the school is running, but in the evening, you might be able to have access to those courts. And the other thing too is that once this pandemic, once it ever gets out of the way, the pickleball courts, pickleball players can resume their play Monday through Friday over at the air-conditioned field house at Sugar St. Park. probably causing some wait time. The facilities over there at Hilton El Rio, having the field house being actually closed to outside activity. And maybe that's something that should be explored anyway about opening up. I'm not sure if you can play tennis outdoors. I don't know why, except the fact that it's indoor. I don't know why we couldn't explore opening that back up for the pickleball.
Thank you, Mr. Rollins. Mr. Ernst?
Yes, to touch base on Steve's comment, I too kind of thought, well, I don't like the idea of having a fence around recreation abilities. That's kind of where this started. And the idea of trying out pickleball was an option over there. But I also recognize where we're at with the golf course, and the more we make changes to it, the more difficult it is to try to implement the changes forward. As a quasi compromise to the solution, my suggestion would be continue with the landscaping concept. Let's see where we go with it. We haven't assigned anything. But as far as the golf course goes, we have a plan, a master plan design that we've implemented. We need to stick with that plan that we have out there because it could take a while to work things out with the city. I always have hope that the city will partner with us in some way or form. So we may have to make adjustments, but right now we've got our design out there and we need to get an answer on that. And until we get one, we can't do anything. In the spirit, I was going to save it to the later on the comments for pickleball. I was quite surprised when my son came home over the weekend and said he was at El Rio Park playing pickleball and how much it was quite hot. He said, couldn't you put one of those low nets over the sunshade nets? It would help immensely. And I said, yeah, I could, but it's not our park. It's something. We'd love to have more shade in our community. But I think the message from Raul can be solved with looking at where we can take existing courts and possibly converting those into some level of pickleball. And we do have a number of courts both at the Swim and Racket Center and at Reef. Let's focus on what's in our backyard. And the third option is next to the field house. I don't know what level of usage. I hate to take away anything from the basketball players, but if any of those, there used to be a field hockey area, if that could be converted into outdoor pickleball on a quicker basis, maybe that would help eliminate some of the, alleviate the need. But the point is well taken. We need to add pickleball. And that's assuming that pickleball came through on the needs assessment. We still have not had our full assessment.
A roller hockey rink service? Yes.
But I'm kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt that my thought on coming out of this group.
Doesn't mean they can't play, they absolutely can.
Volunteers. If Raul wants pickleball courts, give us the pickleball courts. We should focus more on what those community volunteers organize those things and how can we help them do that. I thought Bocatique would be an ideal place to at least explore it, but it was never a long-term solution because I'm pretty confident in saying that the design of the course is too small and they needed everything they could for including the current tennis courts for finishing out. That was a premiere at the end of the game of the 18th hole, as I recall. So it really is needed to have an 18-hole course out of Bocatique. So my suggestion is to let's focus more on just working on a plan with the city and taking our pickleball. How do we expand it either at Sugar Sand, Patch Reef, or at Swim and Racket Center in even a smaller, modest way, because that seems to be the trend where people are going.
Thank you, Mr. Ernst. I do have some concerns because my emails have been running 50-50 for and against. And the objection is not money from the residents, but the noise. Since the pandemic, a lot of people are working remotely from home, and they say that the noise is just when the people were out there playing, and it wasn't a regulation court or anything. The noise was just annoying. So, Jacob, I have a question for you. Is that something that we have a responsibility as far as noise control. How does that work?
Ultimately, it's a policy decision whether to install or maintain pickleball courts at that location. The board obviously should consider input from the community when determining what to put there, but at the end of the day, the decision rests with this board as to what amenities we want to put at that location, pickleball being one of several options, but as Brianna indicated, we have a design for the golf course, and ultimately, whatever we do put there, we need to be accommodated to the framework of that design. But to the extent the board wanted to consider pickleball or any other option, that's something that this board will ultimately control the answer to.
Thank you, Jim.
Madam Chair, I have just a quick question.
Of course.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the city put in their budget, or the last one I saw, for 2021, to develop phase 2 with pickleball courts as part of the component of that facility. I don't know where that stands now, but that's probably the best way to get something permanent going. In the interim, maybe there are some tennis courts in our inventory that we might be able to examine. I don't know about swim and racket or Petrie as far as the utilization of those facilities, but I know I've heard some people complain about the compatibility of the pickleball with tennis in terms of the level of enthusiastic play as far as the noise coming from pickleball. I've never played it, so I'm just speaking from a point of view of someone that expressed that to me, that there being a little bit different sound from the tennis ball being the strings of a tennis racket as opposed to hitting a paddle with the pickleball. But certainly, if we can find a way to accommodate the folks, we can. I think over at Sugar Sand, we've done a pretty good job up until this pandemic of getting space inside for the pickleball folks to play in air conditioning Monday through Friday. Court times available to some days, I think, for half a day. So.
Jacob, is it a legal mandate that we can't have that, the field house open, or could we open the field house?
I would want to look at that. I would want to look into that a little. Whether is there a CO in the field house? I'd like to know, what condition the field house is in and where it stands in the context of the development and operation. Before answering that question.
Okay.
Now, Chairman, I was just over there today and saw a gym that runs it, and the floor has just been refinished. The bleachers were going in today, and I think it's in very good condition right now for play if it were available. And I think it's worth exploring that possibility.
Jacob, would you look into that for us, please?
Yes.
Okay. Brianne, would you put that on for our next meeting?
Sure.
Madam Chair, is it really a legal issue to look into? I thought it was more of a city decision, Palm Beach County decision on sports, since you're going with an emergency room, not under.
Well, that was, I thought, for field use and not for a building, for an enclosed building. I'm not sure, that's why I want Jacob to look into it. So we work with
Brianna collectively and find out the answer.
just don't wanna step on any toes and go over something's head, if we're not supposed to be using that.
Right, yeah, I think, but I guess my point is that the city is the operator of our facilities, and so, it's no different than when the city opened and closed certain parts, where your answer has to go back to the city, who's also gonna say what is available in the Palm Beach ordinance overall, and that leads to the state level, if there is anything. But I thought a lot of things have been restricted under that order period, and that's another reason why they're discouraging it.
I agree, that's why I would be able to look into it.
Depends on which phase we're in. I guess, are we in phase 2? Is that the reason why we're allowing team sports on fields?
Oh, we're still in phase 1.
Still in phase 1?
Correct.
I thought. Because we're Palm Beach County, I think it was us and
Madam Chair, if I may, very briefly, Palm Beach, Miami, and Broward were in essentially a limited phase 2. We were in phase 2 with certain exceptions in the governor's order that opened up the door for the county administrator to submit a plan to the governor for review. I don't know whether the Palm Beach County administrator has done that. We can confirm that as well, but we're in somewhat of a hybrid phase 2 currently, because certain provisions of phase 2 do apply to Palm Beach County, but there's a plan that the administrator needs to submit in order to bring us in line with certain other aspects, particularly related to business operations of phase 2.
Okay, so, Brianne, getting back to the golf course part,
Yes.
want to adjustments to that before we vote on it?
Right now, I'm adding some language for B about trespassing. I don't know if there's any other things that are specific that anybody wants me to add or take out. But if that's the only change, we can certainly make that and get this out and advertise next week.
Chairman, just one comment there as far as the workers' compensation. I don't know that you're going to be able to put the district as an additional insurer on the work comp policy. Never seen that being done, certainly on the commercial building, but the workers' comp policy is an absolute remedy for the contractor from injuries to employees, except for the employer liability, which is a component of that. So just want to alert you to the fact that if you have that requirement in there, the contractor may not be able to meet that provision.
We can strike that.
Are there any other comments or any suggestions that you'd like to have put into the RFP? Hearing none, does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to have,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
make a motion to have Brianne make those, the one adjustment in B, that we discussed, and to get it out to bid. Sweet.
I see. I think you want to amend it for Bob's comment to remove the additional insured requirement.
And to remove the comment that Bob made.
Thank you, Greg. Still keeping workers' comp, just removing the additional insured. Yep. Yeah. And still sick.
Any other comments or questions? Joanne, would you do a roll call vote?
Commissioner Ernst,
Yes.
Commissioner Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Bosa,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Joanne. Okay, item number 3 on page 35 of your agenda packet is the preliminary budget and CIP discussion. Brianne, would you lead us off?
Sure. Commissioners, in your budget, in your agenda packet, starting on page 35, we look at some preliminary drafts of the budget. Our goal is that we need to set a tentative millage rate, and that's supposed to be done by the week of July 20th, which we have a meeting on July 20th, so if it doesn't happen tonight, we have that week to set it, no later than July 30th to set that. Once we set that rate, we can always go down, we cannot go up from that rate. We need to set that, and we also need to set our, we just need to set that rate by that date. So on page 35, it shows a budget with the current rate, which is 9147. It shows the rollback rate, which is on page 36 at 0.8818. We're looking at about an $800,000 difference in revenues from taxes. And we did plug in $5 million for next year for the golf course, just because that was what we had done on our original 5-year golf course plan, but that money can all be, as we go into CIP and start talking about projects, we can adjust those numbers. But in the end, either of these budgets will work, and we'll obviously work to do any projects that you guys put forth. It's just a matter of deciding on between those two millage rates.
I had some questions that you submitted to the city, but we had not heard yet, which would impact a lot of the,
Correct. I did, thank you. I did send a list of questions to the city. given us a couple answers back, but not everything, so we are waiting for a lot of information back just to clarify some of the increases that are in this budget that they've submitted.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions you'd like for Brianne to submit to the city about the city budget or anything else?
Madam Chairman, I have a couple of questions. One that deals with the subsidy we have for the Red Creek Golf Course. And I'm wondering, since the parking meters that are adjacent to the golf course are used primarily by the golfers, why that revenue is not used to actually defer whatever subsidy we might have for the shortfall of the Red Creek Golf Course. I'd like an explanation on the amount of revenue that's coming from those parking meters and why it would not be considered a reasonable request to have that applied to the expenses of the golf course.
Bob, if I could clarify that for you, if you're playing golf at Red Reef and you park over there at the larger parking lot, if there's no room by the golf course, they give you a receipt to put into on your dashboard, and you don't have to pay if you play golf.
Doesn't change my mind at all about the parking revenue.
Wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, but I think as long as we're paying the cost to maintain the property over there, the revenue that's generated, whether it's from beach stickers or from the parking meters, should be something to be considered in reducing our expense. Just looking at the expenses that we have for O&M, 2014, our O&M with the city was 12 million, almost 13 million, and now we're looking at somewhere in the $20 million 5 years later in O&M. So I mean, we've got to start looking for some additional savings somewhere, and I just think that might be one that we would consider.
Good point.
The other question I have, and this is one that occurred to me today, is that we have, in my business, we have this, the PPP program where it reimburses, you get a loan from the SBA that is forgiven if you're using that to retain employees. I think you have to spend at least 75% of those funds on employees, the rest of it will be on things like medical insurance and the like. I know that the county is being allocated a certain sum of money that'll help, some of which will come to the city, and that's on a similar basis to our PPP program, if I'm not mistaken, that it'll serve to reduce some of their expenses. Now, the city has employees, they've been continuing to pay their employees, and from what I understand, some of them were getting time and a half even though they were not actively employed. If the city is getting reimbursed for any of their employee expense, why should we not be a benefactor of that as well? Because if they're paying people who are normally working for us and they're getting reimbursed for that, I don't know why we have to absorb that. Seems like unjust enrichment to me if they get that loan to cover their payroll and we're still paying the same people. If you understand what I'm saying, is that something we can investigate, Brianne?
Yes, sure.
Good point, Bob. Is there anything else, Bob?
I'll get to some more later, but I don't want to hog the floor here.
Mr. Engel?
I'm looking at the budget and a couple of things occurred to me, some of which are covered in the questions that Brianne is asking of the city. But these seem to be repetitive. We see these every year. First is providing slots or requesting employment slots for jobs that have never been filled or will not be filled going forward. This is, ever since I've been on the board, this has been an ongoing issue. And yeah, we don't spend the money if the jobs aren't filled, but we are, in a sense, taxed on it, because the administrative budget, request is based on the number of jobs, that are, requested. Secondly, the, paying for those jobs, for those job slots, or allocating the money prevents us from allocating money to other needs which may be more pressing. And like I said, this has been an ongoing thing, and I'd like to see the city give us a budget that will be realistic. If they're asking for argument's sake, 100 job slots, 100 positions, let's make sure that those 100 positions are going to be filled within reason. We don't need, for example, there's an opening at Gumbo Limbo that Brian has questioned. What's the sense in doing that if you can find a volunteer to do it from Friends of Gumbo Limbo? Why not take that money and use it for something else? I want them to be realistic in what they're asking for, and not just say, well, all right, we're going to ask for X, and even though we're going to use X minus 5. Another issue ongoing has been the request for vehicles. Now, the request has dropped the dollar amount, but we're still looking at what looks like an effective life for the vehicles that are used by the city, especially on the beaches. Maybe a couple years, maybe 3 years at the outside. And part of the problem, I think, is, yes, we have a problem using vehicles on the beaches, and salt erosion is a factor. But, making sure the vehicles are maintained properly, and I'm not talking about the mechanical aspect, I'm talking about when they're put away at night, making sure they're sheltered from the elements properly. These are all things to take into consideration, and if we can add another year or another 2 years on to the effective life of the vehicle, that saves us money. And I'd like to see the city establish a protocol. As a matter of fact, when I first came on the board, I gave the city a protocol based on what we did when I was in the Army. That's washing the vehicle down, making sure all the fluid levels were applicable or where they're supposed to be, reporting any problems to maintenance, making sure maintenance schedules are adhered to. And some of this, I've been told that this has been, that these protocols are being by and large adhered to, but my feeling is that if they were, we wouldn't be seeing 2-year effective lives, replacement lives for some of the vehicles that the city is using that we're paying for.
Is there anything else, Mr. Engel?
That's it for now. I have a couple of items for you later.
Okay. Mrs. Wright, do you have anything? Do you have any questions for Brianne to submit?
Not right now. I went over everything with her earlier today. Just some specifics I had on the budget. But I didn't think we were doing specifics on the budget tonight. I thought we were just discussing the millage rate. Yeah. But I went over everything with her today. Just a few things that I had, and I think the city does the best job that they can over at Spanish River, Steve. I don't know if you've been over there at the facility that they have, and they do the best they can in terms of putting those vehicles away to keep them from the elements. But they don't have a lot of space over there. But I think they do the best they can. And I think that, a lot of stuff doesn't last very long over there. My parents used to live over there, and metals just get eroded away within a couple of years. So I think it's a difficult spot that they're in. but I think they do the best they can to protect Washington down and all that stuff, so, but that's kind of where we're at until they get a new facility out there that's enclosed for the vehicles that they have, you know? But otherwise, I went over everything with Brianne, and then, we'll be talking more once she gets the answers back, I think, from, the questions that she had, from the city.
Thank you. Craig, do you have something?
Yes, a couple things. First of all, I realize this budget is, please understand, it's a work in progress, and it's still developing. And I think for everyone's benefit, we need to keep in mind, it could get a little bit more difficult than we think. You know, and so even though, you know, we reduced our interest earnings from 609,000 to 400,000, last month's interest in our account was $11,932. And basically you multiply that out times, that's on $25 million, which is pretty close to what we have here. That translates into about 132,000. So we're a little overestimating what our interest earnings are going to be. I think everyone's expecting interest earnings to be lower, and they're going to stay much lower. So, and the same thing with the park fees and services. If we've been shut this long, I think we're going to have a lot of hesitancy. The only thing we're going to get is stickers for beach passes, and I don't know if there's going to be refunds for the time off we couldn't use it or other things that come on. Nevertheless, my whole point on all this is that we have to be far more conservative with our budget, and even what you see here and some of the expenses, I would hesitate to make any major commitments on the expense items. And so my question to the city staff, and I did have a call with Zoom call with Brianne, Michael, Jill, Michelle, just to cover some of the details of the things. And as Brianne is on top of it, she's got a number of the questions, and they are very good. The number one thing I would ask of the city is to help explain what they're going to do for encouraging our volunteers to take more leadership role going forward. Because I personally believe that although you may get the military this year, you may not get it next year. And there are some big expenses here that if we overcommit on the golf course, if we overcommit on anything, we could be in real trouble. So it's safer. The city is the entity with the largest amount of reserves, the largest buffer. We have to be particularly careful. And so I would rather encourage, as much as possible, no reduction in staff or anything like that, but encourage the city to leverage its volunteer base for all aspects, including, you know, anyone who's at the front desk. So when there is someone who's not there, you got to have a better plan of, you know, having more volunteers at over at Sugar Sand, at Gumbo Limbo, and anything that kind of takes away from the volunteers' time, I don't think I'm very supportive of it. I'd rather see the city embrace it and see how we can leverage that up. So that would be my only comment, to let them show us how they're going to use more volunteers going forward. And for us, as we get to this next round, we're going to have a little bit sharper pencil as things have progressed in the progress. And it's wishful thinking on the golf course to think that we'll be able to commit to that because you could have such a sharp drop off, you just don't realize it.
I have one question on the Gumbo Limbo front desk used to be manned by volunteers.
Yes.
So I'm not sure why that's changed, so maybe that's something that we can talk about with Jim Miller.
I did talk to Jim today. You know, he doesn't necessarily have the answer to that, but the Friends did previously take all the revenues in for programs and activities. Last year, we funded a computer and city staff was going to take it over, and we would start getting those revenues from programming, which we did not get prior. If we do go ahead and fill and create a part-time position for that, that would pretty much eliminate the revenues that we were collecting at that point. So I think the Friends would be willing to take that back over. It's just that was a decision made by the city as far as how they wanted to operate.
Okay, well, maybe that could be discussed and we would be able to save the 22,000 or whatever it was for that, that position up front, those are like the little things that we could do, so.
Good suggestion. Anything else? Brienne has all of my questions and she's already submitted them to the city, so, they're kind of, on my part, they're kind of nitpicky, but I'd like to have some answers about education and, the educational training for the staff and things like that, so, what is your pleasure, Commissioners? Do you want to discuss the millage rate, or do you want to, put that on the agenda for the next meeting?
Chairman, I think I expressed this at our last meeting, is that I don't know that anybody has a real appetite for increasing our taxes this year. So the two options would really be maintaining the same millage rate or going rollback. If you go with the maintaining the same millage rate, that'd be advertised as an increase because property values go up, so the individuals would have an increase. Our rollback just gives us the same amount of revenue with our millage rate that we took in last year. I started out when I first spoke about the budget and the tremendous increase. But in the last 5 years, we've had a 35% increase in our overhead, and a lot of it is in staffing. The note that Michael Calvert indicated is that with the SEIU, they have a 5% increase in the salaries of those in a guaranteed increase by a union contract. That notwithstanding, I feel like we're going to be probably struggling in the future for revenue, with special interest that Craig mentioned. I think that's going to probably be down as people start next year adjusting to COVID and getting back into the flow of things. If we go to rollback, I think we're going to need to especially sharpen that pencil, and there may be some pain involved for the city with staffing, but I think there's probably some things in there that if we said, okay, we'll give you the same amount for O&M this past year, for this coming fiscal year as we did last year, what kind of stress would that put on the city? Probably a lot, given the union contract. But then we're going to have to find some other areas where we're going to have to save some funds. Now, if there's anybody here that wants to have anything more than rollback, I'll certainly support rollback on our millage rate. But then we're going to have to be a lot tougher on our expense side of the equation with the city and defer some of these things. And what's concerning me is next year they accelerated the beach renourishment, which whether or not that actually happens or not is another thing, and whether or not when we have to make that expense. But we have some big numbers coming up, and I think we're going to have to be very fiscally sound this year moving forward with our budget. I can't emphasize that because I've got a list of things that I would not support in terms of equipment. You mentioned some of the education training. I think we need to evaluate that. That's part of one of your questions I went over with Brienne this morning. And I'm sorry to hog up this time, but I think it's important that we realize that we've really got to get down to the nitty-gritty this year. And I know everybody's given Brienne questions I have as well, but I just want to be sure that everybody knows that I'm going to be looking at these things with a fine-tooth comb and trying to find ways we can save money so that we go to rollback. Our reserve number was something like 771,000. That's probably the lowest numbers we've had reserves if we go in the budget as proposed by the city. That's all.
Brienne?
I just want to add, on page 39 in your agenda packets, we did do a breakdown of what it means to the home value, to the homeowner themselves with the rollback and the current rate. So the average, if your property is, we just did a $300,000 property value, but it's a $10 difference from going to rollback. You save $10 for every $300,000 of value of your house. Just to see the perspective of going from the current rate to the rollback rate.
I would also hate for us to, I do want to lower taxes and go to rollback, but I would also hate for us to, to do that and then the city goes and slashes jobs, that, where they could have not bought a vehicle. Like, we're not the ones who are making the choices on where they're gonna be saving money, right? So, but I do want to lower taxes for people, right? So, but what about things like special interest activities? I mean, is that something that where they can look at? Like, is that the funding that goes to the 4th of July that they just didn't have, that they can reimburse us for, that kind of thing?
The special interest is really like programming and we're gonna be impacted this year from that because there was no summer camps, there was no, there's no after school programs, there was a lot of things that we lost out on.
Right.
We don't know how it will look next year for those things.
Well, we didn't have the expenses for it, but we also
Correct.
didn't have the revenue for it.
Correct. There were other expenses outside, I mean, extra cleaning supplies and things like that that took over some of that, so, but there were not the expenses.
But they haven't factored that into this budget at all, in terms of the effect of COVID on the revenues and the expenditures.
It will affect us this current fiscal year that we're in, more than next year. Beach stickers were pretty much sold, and they're still, I spoke to the supervisor down at the community center who's handling all the beach sticker sales, and I watched as people pulled in, and they're still pulling in and buying their beach permits because there's very limited places to go these days to social distance, so a lot of people are visiting the beaches now that they're open. So that is still happening. I think we'll still sell beach stickers this next fiscal year. I don't know how programming, how after-school programs, how all that stuff will look, and I think that's where we'll see a significant change. And it will impact us this year too.
Madam Chairman, please.
If I might, if we all recall last year, over what we perceived to be a minimal increase in the millage rate, in terms of the actual dollar amount, we heard quite a bit from the public about their opposition. $10 on a $300,000 home isn't a lot by any stretch of the imagination, except to the family whose breadwinners have gotten laid off and are trying to live on unemployment plus the supplement plus their plus whatever they have in the bank. And to them, that $10 even over the course of a year means something because they see the actual $10. To the shopping center owner, who now may be looking at 20-30% vacancy rate, if not 20-30% of his tenants being arrears in their rent and the common area charges, that $10 amounts to a lot more. So we have to bear that in mind. I think we have to be cognizant too of the drops in revenue we're going to experience. Camps, after school programming, etc. The upcoming year or years are going to be a challenge for us. There's no two ways about it. I think we need to give our taxpayers every possible rate that we can give them. And I think the city needs to be cognizant of that. I don't want to cut jobs. I don't want to see somebody who's got a family to support now trying to figure out what they're going to do because they've been laid off by the city because we can't fund a position. I want to fund every active position. I don't want to fund positions that are just there on a maybe, on a spec. We have to be cognizant of all these things. And I think if we can go to the rollback rate, I'm supportive of that. And I'm sure the city would want to work with us in every way possible to get the most out of every dollar that they get from us in revenue and most that we get, in tax revenue. And like Bob said, we're just gonna have to be sharper, with our pencils. We're gonna have to sharpen our pencils and so will the city, and be very smart about how we allocate our funds.
Madam Chairman, that's Bob. Just one comment is that, I have no interest in seeing someone lose their job with the city. But I do think that, as Steve mentioned, there are some jobs that never get filled during the year. And secondly, I don't know, we're always talking about hearing best practices from Michael. I'm just wondering, from a best practices standpoint, are there staffing decisions that could be made? Like, for instance, now, I know there's individuals that maybe still being paid that are sitting home. I know our resources are not being used like it's swimming racket, but I think to Craig's point too, let's find some volunteers that, I know the volunteers do work over at Rotary Golf Course. There's some volunteers that put in a lot of hours over there. But I just think that there may be times where, we have to, throw another couple of $1,000s in maintaining that piece of equipment rather than buy a $60,000 tractor. But with that said, what I would like to propose is that we make a motion that we go to rollback tax rate of 0.8818 for the coming fiscal year, and knowing that that number itself right there cannot be raised, but it can be lowered.
I say,
Madam Chair, I guess just clarification for the process, is that there are 3 meetings related to the tax rate, and if you set the rollback rate now, you do not have an option to go to the existing rate. And so, the rate does not have to be set until final meeting in September, I think it is.
Excuse me, if I may just very quickly, Madam Chair, you need to have a tentative rate submitted to the property appraiser by the end of this month, by August 1st. You have budget hearings in September, at which time you'll adopt a final millage rate and your final budget. But you'll have to have a preliminary millage rate submitted by the end of this month. You do have 2 more meetings this month, at which you can set a tentative or preliminary millage rate, and that's the cap that you cannot go below during your budget hearings in September.
You pointed out earlier to me that, in order to, if you set a tentative millage rate at the rollback rate at this point, it would be very complex and very expensive to try to raise it.
It is. There's a mechanism under state law that allows you to increase beyond what you would set as a cap that requires first-class mail notice to every taxpayer within the district. And there's a specific process under state law that would allow for it. Typically, the tentative millage rate that you establish would become a cap, which you can then go below at your final hearings in September.
So that said, with all due respect to the experienced team of Rollins and Engel, I would really recommend that we, for this first round, we just take the current rate and then we go back and focus on how we're going to sharpen our pencil to get to the rollback rate. You may find that you want to be somewhere in between, because I'm just, we need that extra little bit of time, I think, to flush out some of the other items in this budget, capital-wise, and get agreement with the city on it. I just hate to box ourselves in. I'm all on board with trying to focus on just trying to get us to a rollback rate, but that rate, the 0.9147, the current rate is not far off, and there's no reason to lower it or get to yourself to a final position until really September for the budget.
Mr. Ernst, we have a motion that was seconded, so we will have to vote unless Mr. Rollins wants to withdraw.
I will not withdraw, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rollins.
No,
you're fine now.
Craig, I totally understand where you're going, but if you look at it and look at we're gonna be, I would hope. So if we set that, our budget at that, I think we'll be able to tighten our boots even more, knowing that our budget is even lower. So, and it's not that much lower, and I've talked to Brianne, and she is secure in the fact that we can do either one. So I think, you know, the city knows where we're at, they know where they're at, and they know they're gonna have to tighten their strings too, so, so I'm gonna vote on the, millage, the proposal that Bob set forth already now, so. But I just wanted to say that I understand where you're at.
I'm just gonna point out to you again that some of these numbers are very soft, and so that interest number that you have in there for 400,000 at this stage in the game is not gonna be 400,000, it's some number less than 200,000. And so I ask you to think through each one of those numbers on that page to make sure you think you're gonna get 1,000,004 on charges for park fees and services. I'm saying I'm not comfortable with this budget to say that you're gonna get that. And that having that additional time for flexibility, why box yourself in? I'm all on board.
How would you know? Even a month or two from now, you're not gonna have a better estimate on that number.
You absolutely will. Yeah, I think each one of these numbers, I think it's on us as well as the city, it's a combination. And if you take that, the lower number, just know that you've limited yourself on the top side. If you wanna do that, it's okay, but you need to realize that it may not come in this way. So there's no reason to box ourselves in at this point in time, just to say you have a rollback rate. That's all I'm saying, so.
Brianne, is Mr. Timberlake on?
I just messaged him now. I think he's here.
I mean, keep in mind also too, that we have that $5 million in there for the golf course construction as well. We have budgeted for next year.
Merv, do you want to weigh in on the interest rate that you came up with?
Yeah. You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
You hear me?
Yes.
What was your question on the interest income? I mean, part of the deal with interest income is that we get the heavy tax bill from the taxes from our taxpayers in November, December, and January. And we traditionally have not been sending payments to the city because we have not been billed until those April, May, June timeframe. So a lot of these, I think this year we already have 256,000 or something through the end of May. We'll have that final request now, but.
Yeah, but here's my point, Merv, and I'm gonna be clear about it, is that there's over 25 million in the account, okay? And so, in the SBA account, we only earned 11,000 last month on 25 million. If you double it and say it's 50 million, you're barely over 200,000 in interest earnings. Interest rates are near zero, okay? So, those numbers that you may have earned in the beginning, you can't use a trend line from saying where it's going. Interest is a forward-looking assumption. So I just call into question that one. It's small in the whole part of things. The rest of it, I don't know. I'm just.
The question I would have is, I mean, that's small. I guess the other one, you know, I don't have a handle on my account. Others will have a handle on. Within 45 days is the fees that we collect at the different places. Because we got fees through February, but after that, pretty much everything shut down. So I don't have a really good handle on what those, you know, user fees are going to be. They're going to change dramatically, so.
It could be better, it could be worse. I don't know. It's just.
Well, I mean, depending on, you know, I mean, a lot of it they collect early in the year, but I mean, you know, what is this for next year? It just depends on when we get back to some type of normalcy. So let's see, through the end of May. We had collected 256,000, yes. So,
And I'm going off of what was in June. For June, interest earnings.
you know, I mean, like in January, we got 49, 40.
Different interest rate. After COVID, nothing in January, February.
You're having more in the bank in January, February, but. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you guys come down here. I mean, last year we were really fortunate to make $600,000 because we put it in
been back in the SBA. Yeah, and, this year was gonna be, yeah, I'm sure, we might get 400,000 this year, if we close to it probably. But next year, the change to 200,000, but it's, it's only 200,000 less than what I projected. But like I said, the one that concerns me is the user fee and what they're gonna come in, because, there's no special events going on, we have, the Sugar Camp Park anymore. But that number, once we start seeing the numbers for April and May, about what the user fees will be able to start telling, have a better handle on what that will be for next year.
When do we get those user fees? When can we get those user fees? That
Well, they bill us monthly, and they go through the process of taking them off again. So it's a matter of looking at them. I mean, normally we don't look at them much during the year because they do a lot of adjustments in September, but we'll start looking at them. I mean, I heard there was a rumor that beach stickers had increased substantially. And we get a share of those, so.
I mean, what would worst case scenario?
That's off out. The gas fees are gone, so, that kind of stuff, so. We'll have to handle on that. Hopefully, what we talked about, once we get June city closing, we should be, we'll have 3/4 of the year to see where we are with it.
The other thing that concerns me, quite frankly, and we didn't talk about it, is, we're getting to it. There's a $2.2 million, O&M March, fee, which is in the payables, which I'm gonna ask later for us to defer that. Part of the reason I'm asking to defer it is to better understand why it's so big. And that's the month of March that basically we were closed down. And so it goes to another question of what is payroll really look like in a closed park? What are we evolving to? And I don't know how much work you've had with the city, Merv, to get comfort level.
I think Brianna has told me, I don't know for sure, but Brianna is the one who told me that the city continues to pay employees.
Yeah.
More time, 5 times employees as well during the month of March.
And I'm consumption,
Yes.
whatever the policy is of the city for paying employees, that's fine. It's the question to me, is it more than what we budget? And what do we,
But Craig, you could have, the city pays every 2 weeks. So there are two months a year when the city has 3 payroll. And I don't know, March is a 3 payroll month. But when that happens, of course, that really screws up the percentages. We have, I think, a couple months where we were like $1 million, which is way too low. But.
Chairman, let me interject one thing. First of all, with special interest, it's an in and out, so, the expenses, and the revenue are just about a wash. So, I mean, I don't think there's necessary to talk too much about that line item. As far as the payroll, Greg, to my question, if the city's being reimbursed to some degree by the county for some of these expenses that's being funded by the United States government, then we should be taking advantage of, that should be to our advantage also, keeping some of our expenses down. Because in my operation, we did a PPP, and they paid our payroll for 8 weeks, and strengthened my bottom line tremendously, since that's going to be, the debt's going to be, the way I see it, about 100%, that's going to be forgiven. And then to Aaron's point also, we have $5 million in our budget for the golf course, and while I like to think that we're going to have an opportunity to spend that in 2021, I'm not so sure how we're going to get to that point when the city hasn't been giving us any feedback about our design, and where do we go from there? So I'm comfortable. I understand what Craig's saying, but I do believe that we have a reasonable budget. I think that there's ways that we can trim this, some of the expenses down, so that possibly we can even pay to the bottom line a little bit.
Thank you, Bob. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to call the question. Joanne, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Ernst,
yes.
Commissioner Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Volleson,
yes.
Commissioner Rain.
Mr. Engel has the second. Any discussion, commissioners? Roll.
Commissioner Ernst,
Yes.
Commissioner Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang. Commissioner Vogelsang?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Motion passes, thank you.
Thank you. Reports and discussion items. Executive Director Harms, please start us off.
Yes, commissioners, we did finish, thanks to Mr. Horowitz's help and also Mr. Timberlake, we finished our CRA application to the city, so we are sending that over to them this week. So they will have that application to, and that was our request to be released from the CRA obligation. So we'll hopefully have an idea of how that will work out shortly. I know the city is only meeting one time, their next meeting is in 2 weeks, so maybe we'll hear something about it at that meeting. I did get an email from Mr. Wika today asking if I had time next week to talk about golf. I said, of course, it's my favorite subject, so hopefully we can have some time next week to talk about the golf course, and maybe at our next meeting I'll have some insight on where the city is with the approval process. Our audit is complete for this year. There were no management notes, and the issues from our audit last year were all addressed. I want to thank Joanne and Murr for coordinating all the documents and getting everything to our auditors so quickly, and I want to thank Stella and Raquel and the team at Growler Associates for their patience. It was a little different this year doing things with such distance between us. Usually they come in the office, unload the boxes, but everything was coordinated and figured out, and we dealt with and got it done, and I appreciate everybody's help with all that. We advertised the RFP for Ocean Strand. We've already had 15 inquiries, so I'm looking forward to getting hopefully a lot of proposals and options back to you all next month. Those are due July 31st. Also, I got some information from the community center section, and also tonight I did get more from Gumbo Limbo too. So there's some exciting things happening at our centers, even though they're closed. Community center section has been working on some virtual programming and getting camp packets out and camp backpacks with some activities out to people, and I have some pictures that I'll forward out to everybody as well. The bloodsuckers exhibit that we talked about trying to get early, they are actually going to install that on Monday. So the Exploring staff is going to work on getting some programming out online as well for people to take a look at the exhibit virtually, at least until that facility is open to the public. Also, last week, Mr. Petrozelli, who's a neighbor over at Ocean Strand, let me know that there was some work going on the eastern portion of the property, which is the 3 acres we have on the water on the ocean side. City staff uses that uses an access point there to clean up the beach. It's not open to the public. We don't have lifeguards there. There was some wooden steps that went down to the ocean, and I was notified that there was a path being put in and some Moby mats being put in, and the steps had been removed. So the concern was that somebody had taken the RFP and started doing work or something along those lines. The city had good intentions in that they were trying to remove the steps as a safety concern. Unfortunately, we didn't approve that or have any authorization on that ahead of time, so they've assured us that in the future, when they make improvements on our property, they will let us know ahead of time. But that was done, and hopefully we'll just work on getting some better communication with the city staff on what they're doing on our properties before they do it. And that is my report.
Thank you. Did you have something you wanted to share with the board about the Sugar Sand Park? Some of the things that need to be done over there at the community center?
Yeah, I actually took Commissioner Rollins through that this morning. We walked through, I think that there's some things that could be done inside. I'll send out a report on that outside of this meeting, and just part of that was for some of the budget requests. We wanted to go look at that facility and see what's happening. And I have gotten additional information that I had not gotten before. There's apparently weekly updates that go out, and I hope that we can start getting those more frequently, because it helps to see what's happening in those facilities. So I'll put that out there to all of you next week. I mean, tomorrow, not next week.
That would be great. Also, we have a meeting scheduled for July 27th. That will be canceled, since we just passed the tentative millage rate.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
That is all for me.
Okay. District Council, Mr. Horowitz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to
brief item, the board, you recall last month, our office was authorized and directed to engage Steve Watson, Calvin Giordano, to prepare a certified legal description of the Ocean Strand property. Mr. Watts completed his work. We went ahead and got the certified legal and recorded the declaration of restrictive covenants last week. We forwarded a final recorded version to each of you along with to the executive director for the district's files. That item is now recorded in the public records of Palm Beach County and will continue to encumber the property known as Ocean Strand unless it's otherwise released pursuant to the terms set forth in that declaration. So that's wrapped up. That's the only item I had, Madam Chair. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horowitz. Commissioners, Mr. Engel, would you like to start us off?
Speaker insists. We've talked all night tonight about the possibility of shortfalls in revenue. We've talked about using more volunteers, and something I can give you thought to, and we've done this before, or something like it before. What I'd like to do is, I'd like to propose setting up a foundation, Beach and Park District Foundation, if you will, that will enable residents, non-residents, any user of our parks to, in effect, buy a brick, such as what we did for the science playground once upon a time. But I'd like to see it expanded. I'd like to see it expanded to cover all our properties, and it can be a brick in a walkway, it can be a bollard, it can be a park bench, it can be a scoreboard, it can be almost anything. And I think this is a great way to get our stakeholders even more involved. The establishment of a foundation would isolate these funds. They wouldn't contribute them to us, and 2 years later, when my park bench isn't built, where is it? The money will be set aside specifically. I think this is a way of addressing future shortfalls because, as Commissioner Ernst brought up, there are going to be some issues going forward. Maybe, hopefully, we'll avoid them in the upcoming fiscal year. But if we don't, this might be a way of addressing them and a way of getting not only individuals, but nonprofits, corporate entities involved in our projects. I have no problem with Duharney Phase 2 being Office Depot Phase 2. Of course, Duharney Phase 2 isn't our property, but just as an example. And I think this would be a great way for us to help cover our shortfalls, to get the community even more involved. For those who can't volunteer for time or physical restraints, this is another way for them to volunteer and to get some of our corporate stakeholders even more involved. But I'm just putting it out there. I think it would be a great idea. I like Brianne, if she could, to investigate it a little further so we can flesh it out. Jacob, if you could also investigate to see how we can flesh this out, to put together some details so we can discuss this in a future meeting.
Jacob, are special districts allowed to create foundations?
The short answer is generally yes, and it's not uncommon for local government to have a foundation. Some cities, in fact, have what are known as Parks Foundations or Parks and Rec Foundations to raise funds for purposes similar to what the Commissioner describes. Some other local governments have Veterans Foundations. I'm aware of one city that has a 9/11 Memorial Foundation. So the nonprofit foundation is another vehicle that the board could use to essentially raise funds as a supplement to the general fund or for some other purpose set out in the articles of incorporation and bylaws of that foundation. There are some considerations. In many instances, the governing board, this board, could in fact be the board of that foundation as well. Alternatively, the board could appoint a separate foundation of residents, staff, etc. We look a little little further as to how we want to have that board structured. What I'm hearing from the commissioners, and maybe somewhat of a preliminary discussion at this point, we'll go ahead and do some research, work with Ms. Harms, and add something to a future board agenda for some further discussion, if that's what the commissioner would like to see.
I'd like to see this future agenda item, yes.
And as far as costs go, what would legal fees be and filing fees and things like that? I think we need to have that all up front too.
We'll put all of that together. The filing fee, I don't know exactly for creation of a nonprofit, typically it's a couple $100, which is filed with the state for the entity's creation. Our fees, which are not, and it's not all that much legal work that goes into it. There is a little bit of preparation of the articles of incorporation, preparation of the bylaws, but it's not all that complicated. We put together a pro forma as to some estimated costs and anticipated costs associated with that process.
Thank you.
Chairman, I would think that Brianne could be the muscle in this and puts together the program, and then the legal documents would be prepared by, I don't see Jake participating in the research on what we want, other than taking what we want and putting it into a legal document. That's what I have in mind. Is that consistent with your thoughts?
Yes, and Steve, I'd like for you to work with Brianne since you came up with this great idea, to give her direction and help her out with that, and we will all also give our input.
I'd be more than happy to.
Thank you. Is that all you have today, or would you,
Well, I could do a 5-minute stand-up, but I think I'll pass on it. That's all I have.
Mrs. Wright?
I have nothing today.
Mr.
I
Roll?
will be August, I won't be here at the July 20th meeting, I'm gonna try, but I don't think I'm gonna be available.
Well, safe travels.
Thanks.
Mrs. Rollins?
Yes, Madam Chairman. Just a couple of things. In our old days, when we met at the Service and Park Conference Room, people were asked to sign in when they came to a meeting. Do we have the capability of knowing who's on our meetings, who listens in on our meetings at all? Or is it somebody logs in, all you see is the telephone number?
Well, you do just see telephone numbers unless they've signed in through their computers, but there is we record all these meetings and all this information is recorded as well.
And the next thing I have is we talked about Jeffrey Street extension and asking, I think, Sam and Jake to investigate whether or not the railroad would allow another crossing here, what the parameters were. I think in our last meeting we discussed that. I don't want to look past that because that could have an effect on what we plan to do with the golf course. So I just want to make sure that's being followed.
Madam Chair, to the Commissioner, thank you. That item is on our radar, Commissioner. After the last meeting, we did make a phone call to the railroad. We're waiting to hear back, but we hope to have an update on that item at your next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Just one other item at the time.
No, I think the other thing is Greg mentioned we need to stay laser focused on the golf course, and I think Craig emphasized the need to do that as well, since we have a master plan. Let's stick to it and keep trying to get the agreement from the city to approve our master plan. And that's all, Madam Chair.
Mrs. Rollins? Mr. Ernst? You're muted.
Two comments. One is, I hate to go back, but on the rollback rate, I'm supportive of the rollback rate, and I voted for it. But what I guess I would like to see, and I was not anticipating that we were going to have a discussion tonight, is that we stick to a schedule. And the schedule is that we were going to set it at the end of July, and that was what we agreed to. So, it gives us a little bit more flexibility to understand things. So, if we're going to be setting an agenda and a schedule, I would like to stick with that schedule and, rather than bump things up. And then, as far as the foundation goes, we spoke and we already have, I think this group has founded really the seeding of Gumbo Limbo as a games out there at the Sugar Sand Playground are those volunteers. So I think it would behoove us to do everything we can to support volunteers in these different areas, which we do. But let's do more of it. So early on, when we talked about Bocatica as a golf course, I was kind of, in a joint meeting, we talked a little bit about, and I still am very strongly supportive of the Bocatica community being more involved in this golf course. There's your volunteer base, and those are the people who have to be, you need that nonprofit group to be the leaders in getting involved, and that will offset much of the cost. And through them, maybe if they want to donate something or be involved, they can do it. But I think it has to be with specific pockets to get people involved rather than just a general fund to see it. I don't know, it's just a thought. People like to see if we're involved in things, more willing to get engaged, more willing to donate or to do things at the end when they want to give their money. That's all I have.
Thank you. The only thing I am concerned about the environmental impacts on Ocean Strand. I think we need to consult, and I think Brianne was going to look into someone at Nora and the city to check on what we have to be careful in not disturbing and what we can remove as far as exotics and things like that. So I'm very aware that we need to move very, very carefully on not doing something that would harm the environment over there. And the other thing I have is that I think we should all wish Brianne happy birthday. Her birthday's in this week, so happy birthday, Brianne.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, thank you.
Are there future agenda items that you would like to see on the agenda?
Outside of the research on the foundation and a report on same, I'm good.
Okay, anybody else? Mr. Engel, do you have a motion that you'd like to make?
Yes, I do, and it's move to adjourn.
Great. Mr. Rollins seconds. Joanne, do a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Ernst,
Yes.
Commissioner Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,